Welcome to LYLAS. If you've listened to any of our previous episodes, this would be the part where I say, if you grew up in the 90s and you know what that stands for, this podcast is for you. But today's episode is truly for every person on this planet. It is for anybody who has ever been touched by addiction, whether you've loved somebody who's struggled with addiction, whether you've struggled with addiction yourself. This podcast is one you're going to want to stick around for because we have a top tier guest, in my opinion. He's a big win for the LYLAS podcast, and some people know him as the Huntington Hammer. We know him as Craig Hettlinger, a former classmate of ours from the class of 2000, Cabell Midland High School. The soccer stud, as I recall, from 96 to 2000.
Definitely.
And, so welcome to the LYLAS podcast, Mr. Hettlinger.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So today's topic, obviously, we're going to cover addiction and recovery, but tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us how your path to recovery started.
Well, it's how much time do you have?
As you need.
Yeah, as you said, I grew up here in Huntington and really Barbersville, and played sports growing up and was very successful in a lot of different pitches and courts and fields and diamonds and I anytime we would go outside of the state to play, I guess I was average, but around here, I was, the talent pool is a little less, because of sheer numbers, and I was above average here, and I ended up playing soccer at Marshall University. The last time, Marshall's a powerhouse now in terms of NCAA soccer, but the last time they were ranked before a few years ago was my sophomore year, and well, I remember my sophomore year we beat Akron at home. They were a top 10 team, and we went out that evening after we beat them because you celebrate when you win against a top 10 ranked team in the country. And I passed out that evening after using a bunch of cocaine and alcohol, not because my team was doing it. I took my own path, but I passed out at 19 and I woke up and I was 32 years old in a homeless shelter in Richmond, Virginia, wondering how in the hell I got there. I had lost over a decade of my life, and I was lost. I was broken, and I had no idea how I got there. How could a guy with so many resources, with such a great upbringing, with so many people that cared about him, and in all fairness, graduating with honors and so much intellect, not as smart as you all, but I had all the things going for me, and I was in a soup kitchen, and my dad was sending me about $10 a week, and I just lost everything. I didn't know, it didn't make any sense to me. And what I finally realized, and it's kind of cliche, but everybody, you don't really think about it, but addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care where you come from. It doesn't care who your parents are. It doesn't care who you know. A guy told me one time, Matt Boggs, who was the executive director at Recovery Point, who's now living in Florida, he said, "You've got a lot of potential." And he said, "You know what that means, right?" And I said, "What?" He said, "It means you haven't done shit yet. It means you could, but you haven't." And that really stuck with me. And ever since, I got sober 5 years ago, and the day I got sober, I wanted to make sure that I never left any doubt, never left any stone unturned, and that nobody could make the argument that I had potential, but I hadn't demonstrated it yet. I hadn't done anything. I wanted to make sure that every morning that I was blessed enough to put my feet on the floor, that I did everything I could that day to be the hardest worker in the room. I've had some successes over the last 5 years that you really can't. It's difficult to make up. to see the things that have happened and transpired. And, I had a really neat idea about a recovery program. And today, the success of that recovery program isn't because of my grand scheme, isn't because of me. It's because of the implementation of my staff, and I give credit to the people that surround me. I'm a general contractor. I own a 110 bed recovery facility, and all this stuff has happened within 5 years. I'm an undefeated boxer, as you mentioned. I own a lawn care business. I'm the executive director of our nonprofit. I am the chair of the Cabell County Recovery Coalition. I sit on the Mayor's Council of Drug Control Policy. And this has all happened in 3 years. And I own about 20 different pieces of property in the city of Huntington. 5 years ago, when I walked into a recovery program, I had nothing but a red tennis bag with all my belongings in it. I've never even played tennis. I looked like Pete Sampras on crack cocaine, walking in that place. And I walked in, my entire life, I thought I was supposed to mold and shape my life to make it look like what my friends' lives look like, or what my parents thought my life should look like. Like my mother wanted me to be an attorney, and one of these prestigious things. And every time that I tried to mold and shape my life to make it look like what everybody else wanted it to look like, or what I thought it should look like based on everybody else's lives, it just crumbled. It wasn't until I walked into a recovery program 5 years ago that I just took my hands off the wheel. I got out of the driver's seat and I said, God, whatever you feel like, whatever you put in front of me, I'm going to do. Whatever the people that you put in my path tell me to do, I'm going to do. And whenever I did that and just did what was in front of me, things just started to materialize, and it didn't make any sense because it was such a paradox compared to what I was taught when I was younger. If you could, we're responsible for the effort, but I realize today that my higher power is responsible for the outcome. And as long as I'm doing what's in front of me and doing the things necessary to improve my quality of life, I always want, blessings just get thrown my way today. And I thought, in my first year of recovery, I thought to myself, man, if these things were thrown my way in active addiction, I never would have needed the drugs. But I didn't realize that I wasn't ever in position, and I wasn't ever receptive with a substance in my body. I never placed myself in position to be able to receive the things that were headed my way anyway. Now that I'm in position and doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, nobody wants anything out of me other than consistency. And that's what I tell my clients every day. Like, the only thing anybody wants out of me is consistency. And not consistently bad. Actually, I taught class today at 9:00 at my program. And this is one of the things I went over with them today. If you have the fundamentals, if you can show up to work on time, if you can do the things, if you can say yes sir, yes ma'am, I can teach you the rest. I can teach you the rest of this stuff. And I realized, when I started to create these businesses, I've got 3 or 4 of them now. And when I started to create these businesses 5 years ago, I thought that businesses were only owned by people that had a lot of money. I had no idea, and it never registered to me that persistence, perseverance, some of these qualities were supremely valuable in creating them too. And what I realized later was money was the easy part. We're one of the richest countries in the world. Money's on every corner. Like, what I thought was the difficult part was actually the easy part. Those characteristics that I maintained, because I demonstrated a ton in active addiction of persistence, consistency. It was just misdirected, right?
Right.
And I didn't realize that those things were valuable, and those things translated into everyday life. And I redirect my sales, I'm absolutely unstoppable, because all I did was take those and reposition them into a different arena or focus. And I realized today that the most valuable things that most people don't have are those characteristics, the persistence, those types of the consistency, the determination, all that stuff.
Right.
And every addict and every alcoholic in this country maintains those things.
It's true.
And if we can get those things redirected, and that's what I champion and encourage my clients, and they're starting to understand that. And when they understand those things, every single one of them are going to be unstoppable.
That's, yeah, that actually, you led me to a couple questions that I wanted to cover. But the first one, I think, being because you mentioned it's the higher power in you that really is the outcome. Would you say you were spiritual or religious before you found recovery?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. It's kind of like my parents, my mom specifically, Senora Hettlinger. I'm sure y'all had her in school, but
See,
she, she would take me to church on Sundays, but it seemed like the more that I was corralled and herded into a church, like the more I wanted to repel from it.
Yeah.
As juvenile and elementary as that sounds, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And when I was able to when I understood that I could develop my own conception of a higher power, and my own conception of God, I thought that makes a little bit more sense to me. And in the book that I live by, that book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that 575-page book that I find as the absolute truth, it was actually pulled from the book of James and the Bible, but they repackaged it a little bit to make it more available to all religions and all spiritual pathways, and I can get down with that. In that book, it talks about every single person in this world has a different, at least a fractionally different conception of God, and even all the Methodists, even all the Catholics have a little fractionally different perception of who God is and how He operates, and I understood that, and it kind of equates like people's recoveries are a lot like our DNA. They all have these fundamental and foundational elements that are similar because we're human. But there are differences in everybody's DNA, much like there are differences in everybody's recovery. What keeps me sober, permanent, and long term might get the next guy high tomorrow.
Right.
Because I'm the kind of guy that has to stay busy, my hands has to stay busy. I have to be moving all the time. I'm an extreme version of the idea that idle time is the devil's workshop.
Yeah.
And I have to stay busy, or I'm in danger. But somebody on the other side of that might be overwhelming to them. But no, I wasn't a spiritual guy, but I found my own conception to be very, very valuable and beneficial. And I just ran with that.
Do you think people can find recovery outside of religion?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. I think so. Whenever I first started, and I don't think I mentioned it. I think I passed by it. But when I was playing soccer at Marshall, I'm going to back up just a little bit. When I was playing soccer at Marshall, I tore my ACL, and my senior year, and not Marshall, but the physicians I was seeing put me on pain medication. And the minute that pain medication entered my body, I thought to myself, man, where has this stuff been? It was the most amazing thing I ever felt. And, knowing that I went on to heroin and Oxycontins and Opanas for an extended period of time, I look back on those Loratab 5s that I took that were just nothing. And I'm like, man, I can't believe those things actually made me feel that way at that time, because I graduated so drastically through my drug using career that right. I mean, they probably would now because I'm almost 6 years sober, but there was a time that I was doing 7 or 8 Roxycontin 30s just to feel well, like just not to be sick. It didn't even get me high. It just kept my sweats off. It kept me from not vomiting and diarrhea and things of that nature, you're spending $210 just to feel okay. It's like somebody going and taking a small dose of cough medicine. I was spending $210 just for that. But I do absolutely feel that somebody can pursue permanent long-term recovery without the spiritual side. I absolutely do. Does it work for me? No, it doesn't. But again, my recovery isn't everybody else's. And whenever I first started creating the Huntington Addiction Wellness Center in 2019, I was told I built a fitness gym out back of the building, and the real hardcore AA people were somewhat critical of what I was doing inside the facility, because they would come to me and say, I've seen an awful lot of people submerge themselves in fitness and end up with a needle in their arm. And I thought to myself, that's funny, because I've seen a lot of people submerge themselves in AA and end up with a needle in their arm too. If we look at permanent long-term success rates out of programs or AA, we're talking 10%, right? We're talking somewhere in the ballpark of about 10%. And to me, if I took 100 people, I knew this to be the case. If I took 100 people and I put them solely in a fitness program, and it removed the Bible, removed AA, and just worked on the dopamine and serotonin that is increased by physical fitness, I guarantee you I can get 10%. Guarantee it. So I thought to myself, if I can get 10% from fitness, if I can get 10% from AA, if I can get 10% from the church, if I can get 10% from an occupation that they love attending, that's 40%. Now I'm doing something.
Right.
So what I wanted to really hone in on is figuring out what people wanted to do with their lives and encouraging them to do more of it. Instead of force feeding them something that was from a program-centered approach. I didn't believe in that. So I wanted people talk about holistic all the time. People have a lot of stuff to say about, well, we do this.
Yeah.
But it's talk. That's all they do is talk about it.
Yeah.
We do it, and that's what sets us apart and has made us pretty successful and very well respected over the last 3 years. We're probably the youngest program in town. But I'm sitting on a panel next month at the state level. We've proved ourselves. I was a year and a half sober. I was a year and a half sober when the state of West Virginia awarded me $1 million to pursue our concept. We've received that money now for 3 years, and realistically, I submitted that information to the state of West Virginia. I was just shy of a year sober. They should have thrown that thing in the garbage. They should have thrown it in the garbage, because who was I, right? I wasn't even a year sober. I didn't, but to me, that is more evidence that there's something else orchestrating the day-to-day operations of our facility. I could tell you 5 stories that happened while I was working in that building that would blow your mind. And we may get to that. You may want to hear one of them, but it's not about me. It never was. I'm not the guy that's orchestrating all this. I truly believe that there's something greater that orchestrates everything in this universe. And there's something to be said about the law of attraction too. You put good stuff into the world, good stuff's gonna come back to you.
100%. 100%. Well, I think that's what's so interesting to me is the fact that you guys it sounds like, I can correct me if I'm wrong, but almost like you have an individual care plan for people once they come to your recovery center. That's maybe different from like an AA program. My dad went through AA. He went to a recovery center a couple of times, and I don't ever remember there being and maybe he just didn't tell me, but is that kind of what I'm hearing, that you have a different plan? Because like you said, what works for you may not work for me. And so is that sort of the model that you use?
Absolutely. I used to go to this church, and when you walked into this church, it said on the big screen, it says, meet them where they are. And that's talk, right? That's just talk. It's a great slogan. It sounds really good,
Yeah.
but they don't really meet you where they are. They only meet you where they are, where you are, as long as you're somewhat close to where they are, right?
Right.
Like, so
Right.
I like whenever they come into our facility, it makes our jobs harder. It makes to individualize an approach for every person,
Sure.
because we're not program centered, we're client centered. It makes it very difficult. We have to be on our toes. We have to change. We have to do things that we don't typically do to take that approach for an individual client. But that's why we're making a difference, and that things are getting better for people that enter our doors, because we are really willing to do whatever it takes to make somebody succeed permanent long term. Yes.
Do you happen to know what your success rate is at this point?
I knew you were going to ask that, right?
I'm just curious.
So our completion rate of our phase one. So our phase one is up to 30 days. Our phase two, which is a transitional living style, is a minimum of 5 months. And then we have an optional phase two, which almost nobody is doing in the state, to where we have secured, you know, there's so many veins to this. I've purchased about 10 properties in the city of Huntington, for less than $10,000 each. Some of them at 4,000, some of them 7,000, and I've remodeled them myself. And the reason we're doing that is because when people finish our phase one and phase two, probably 80% of the time they do not have a healthy environment to go back to. And I didn't want to hand them a certificate and say, good job, now it's time to go back to the environment that was causing the addiction in the first place. It didn't make any sense, and it was just this hamster wheel that they remained on. So we remodeled these properties and got them really cheap. So we're able to provide housing after the program for people that don't have those healthy environments. I could have 100 of those, and it wouldn't be enough. But so our full program completion success rates is somewhere around 75 to 80%.
Okay.
And when you're talking about, we rarely see anybody leaving our program.
That's amazing.
It's just, and I think about this, like, our curriculum really isn't any different than, because the curriculum that you use is all recovery program curriculum is largely the same. Big book, Bible, principles to live by, things of that nature. But the one thing that I've found that we do significantly different than anybody else is not only the holistic part of it, where we provide housing at the end of it, but it's about compassion, right? It's about understanding and truly meeting people wherever they're at and doing what you say. We can't stand and say we're going to do these things, and then when we get you in the program, we've okey doked you to the point where, like, you're here, so we don't really have to do those things. If we tell you we're going to do something, we do it. And I think one of the most important things also is I don't make any decision in my organization on my own. And if they see the CEO and the founder of the program conferring with the rest of his people on just very important decisions, that rolls downhill, and nobody else does that either, because the head isn't doing it, so nobody else is going to do it. And I try to be the hardest worker in the room, anywhere I go. And when I do that, I remember my dad, I was sitting out front pulling weeds in our mulch bed out in front of our phase one portion of the program. My dad works next door at Creative Kitchens, and he comes walking over. He comes over to say hi every now and then. He says, "Man, don't you have anything better you could be doing as the CEO of this company?" And I'm like, Dad, what you don't understand is there's more value in this. And one of my clients seeing me pull weeds and my staff members seeing me pull weeds than there ever will be sitting behind a desk. And he kind of looked at me and he shook his head up and down and went back over. Went back over to his, and not only was he proud, I think I may have taught him something. And, it was just a really cool moment. And I just, I'm not held captive by society's idea of how things should operate. And, I was held captive for long enough. And, I equate one of the things I take, a lot of my lessons are I have created over the last 5 years, and I've got a book that I've typed them all up, and that way I have them in case I forget some of them. And it's called The Other Playbook, because I tell all my clients you have to the Buffalo Bills lost 5 Super Bowls in a row.
Yeah, I know.
And I make the argument that one of the reasons, whether it's true or not is irrelevant, that one of the reasons they may have lost those 5 Super Bowls in a row is because they keep operating from this same playbook, right? And it runs parallel to active addiction. You continue to do the things that you're doing, you're going to get the same results, right? And so I've generated a lot of different lessons that my clients have taken a lot of heed to. And one of the parallels that you all as psychologists will appreciate is the parallels between Stockholm Syndrome and active addiction. And that is probably one of their favorite classes that I do, because they've literally fallen in love with their captor. And that's how I look at it. My 5-year-old, well, he just turned 6. He's taught me more over the last 5 years about addiction and about life. Because I'm capable of seeing what my higher power is teaching me through him. And it's funny, like people that didn't know, I would never listen to them before. Like when we were seniors in high school, I would never listen to a freshman. Like it just wouldn't make any sense. But my 6-year-old has taught me these things, and it's just like, it is amazing to me what I get taught by my 6-year-old. He's got such a good heart. My kids are my world, and actually my son's playing here in a couple hours, and so I get to go watch them play Spring Valley, and
Nice.
Wow.
hopefully go to the state tournament. But it's been an interesting 5 years. It's a very interesting 5 years. 16 years of my life in heroin addiction was difficult. Was absolutely difficult. Even though I had all the resources, but life is so much easier today without the substances. You never could have got me to believe it. If you would have tried to tell me 5 years ago that my life would look today like it does, I would have thought you were the one that needed the drug test, not me. I just didn't see it possible.
Yeah.
What is that? Object permanence. Object permanence. When a child or when an adult is playing peekaboo, the child laughs because they think the adult is gone, just because the hands are over your face. Well, that's kind of what I was in the middle of in active addiction, because I never thought things were possible. I never thought recovery was possible. And then things start being revealed, and I'm like, you're on this pink cloud, and you're like, oh, wow, like this is, you're not necessarily laughing at it, but there's this rush of emotion, like, man, this is fantastic. And it's very similar. There's a lot of psychological brain development, child psychology brain development that's very parallel to what we experience in active addiction.
Yeah.
You remind me so much of my dad. I talked about him on a previous episode, and mostly about just like the loss of a parent and how impactful that was to my life. But he was an alcoholic before I was born for the first maybe 2 years of my parents' marriage. And then he was sober for over 20 years. Never saw the man go near alcohol. Completely sober, very like nose to the grind, had a business, a successful business. And after his second marriage, he fell back into addiction. I was in my 20s. And he went to some recovery programs, and he attended AA, and he would get better for a while. And then he would, maybe smoke a joint, and then it would lead back down to, a bottle of whiskey and then moonshine, it was a very slippery slope, and
Yeah.
it kept happening over time. And at this point, I'm in my early part of my career. I'm in, late 20s, and it was having such an impact on me that I eventually got to the point where I just had to set a boundary and say, if you're drinking, I can't be around you. I don't want to hear from you. And that was really hard because I was very close to my dad. And so much so that the year that he died, I didn't see him that Christmas before. He died in February. The last time I saw him was in October because he was in active addiction at that point. And it was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had to make, to tell somebody you love that I love you, but I can't be around you. And at that point, I didn't have kids, but it was having such an effect on my own mental health, just dealing with the phone calls and the drama that's always associated with it. And I have a friend who has a sibling that is an addict. And, you know, I think what we struggle with is, what's our role in that as a loved one? Do we have a role in that? Or is it simply to set the boundary and say, I'm here for you, I love you when you're ready? Or is there something else truly that can be done?
Well, the best thing my parents ever did for me was nothing. You know, I think when you're talking about somebody, a loved one dealing with someone in active addiction, active substance use disorder, I think there's some initial attempts at trying to get them the help that's required, but after they've established that they are not going to take heed to those suggestions, the best thing that my parents did for me was nothing. They loved me. They loved me with everything inside of them. They wanted me to get better, but I wasn't going to get better until I had no more resources available.
Yep.
And I had to, and that's a difficult thing to do as a parent, right?
No, I can't imagine.
Because one of those things, one of the possibilities is that you take your hands off of the situation. You stop giving them money. You're not giving them gift cards to Walmart. My parents thought that giving me gift cards was going to somehow, and not giving me cash was going to somehow magically stop my drug addiction. No, I went and traded those gift cards for 50 cents on the dollar to the dope man, and I got half the amount of dope. I didn't care that I was getting ripped off. I was getting
Right.
dope. It didn't matter if it was just half of it. But I had to be stripped of all my resources in order for me to be like, oh crap, now it's on me. Like,
Yeah.
now I've got to figure this out, and I don't have any idea how to figure this out. Therefore, I had to be forced to make a change and make a decision. I'm going to go into the recovery program. Now, I have the point of view and belief that every time somebody goes into a recovery program, yeah, I think the average is like 6.7 times, something like that, that somebody goes into a recovery program before they get help. If, as long as somebody's trying to improve their quality of life, I would argue that a parent is justified in providing some assistance, not while they're in active addiction, but while they're in the middle of trying to pursue getting better. Anytime you're giving somebody resources just to continue their dysfunction, you're hindering, you're helping sustain it. You're helping sustain their dysfunction. But if somebody's in a treatment program and they need a pack of socks, or they think of that, toothbrush or something like that, that's not enabling. My dad was one of the biggest enablers, and he had no idea he was doing it. It was all out of a place of love. But every time somebody steps into a recovery program, even if it is the fifth, sixth, seventh time, I would argue that they're fractionally closer to grasping and grabbing a hold of this thing. One of the things that I teach my clients is that millionaires on average fail the first 4 times before they ever become quote unquote millionaires, successful millionaires. And I ask them, like what would have happened if they would have said, you know what, this thing failed on the first attempt. I just think that this isn't for me, right? They never would have become millionaires on the fourth attempt if they would have quit on the second time or the third time. There's fundamental elements in learning So failure, therefore, is fundamental in success, and I had to learn the things, the liabilities. If you're looking at it from a business perspective, I had to learn the liabilities of my quote unquote business, even though it's my recovery. I had to
Mm-hmm.
learn the liabilities. I had to learn the assets, How much, what does my inventory look like? How much? Why do I have too much of this or too little of this? And there's a chapter in my book that's getting ready to come out. It's called ABE, ABE, always be evaluating. And I had to understand that every situation, every person, I have to evaluate those,
I see.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and there's a difference in treatment to somebody who is a CEO of a company that's running a multi-million-dollar bank or organization,
You're
like
right.
that can't, literally cannot remove himself or will not remove himself from that position to go to inpatient treatment. So I understand my niche is the people. I love the people. I love the homeless. Like, I love the people that don't have anything, because that's not that I was necessarily homeless, but I didn't have anything. I had lost everything. Everything was in my red tennis bag. So if they are willing to come into an inpatient treatment, I can very easily guide and direct somebody from that fashion. But not knowing specifics, it's difficult to really fine tune a response for that, because it is so different for everyone. The first thing I would do is call an addiction professional and let them evaluate. Do I, there's another question I would have is like, how long has this been going on?
Right.
Like, how many times has this happened? Because that will yield a different response also, because I do feel like that there are occasions that inpatient treatment isn't necessary. It's always beneficial, but I feel like there's sometimes that we can catch it before that we have to go to that point.
Sure.
What those things that an outpatient facility would do, that's not my niche, right? Like, I'm the inpatient. Whenever I got a captive audience, I feel like that has the best success rates, is
Sure.
when they have a captive audience.
Yeah.
And they can't go anywhere, and their mind isn't being tainted or what's the word I'm looking for, or diverted from the regular operations of the world, and I can kind of shut them off for a little while for them to pay attention to the things I need them to pay attention to. That's always a route that I want people to take. But you said something about earlier that made me think about, everything in life is a process.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk to my clients about. Like, everything in life is a process. And whenever I remember when I got out of my treatment center, I was about a year and a half sober. What's funny is I was 90 days sober, and the executive director of the program comes to me and he says, "Are you ready to be the director of phase one?" I'm like, dude, I'm 90 days sober. I like, you want me guiding and directing 35 people when I just now got my stuff together? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I thought to myself, well, maybe he sees something I don't see in myself. And that ended up being like, I loved it so much, and here I am. But so I was a year and a half sober. And the rational mind, the worldly perspective one would think that whenever I got out of that recovery program, I would want, and I'd been away from my kids for a year and a half, I would want to spend every minute that I had free with my children. Like, that would make sense. You've been gone for a year and a half. And this applies to people that have been to prison too, right? Like, recovery, prison, whatever. So I get out of the recovery program, I go home, and I'd spend a couple hours with my kids. And like, I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And for 3 months, I'm like, man, I'm a defective parent. Like, I thought to myself, I thought I was a defective parent because I could only spend like who does that? You've been gone for a year and a half, dude. Like, and you can only spend 2 hours with them. And I would always get these looks from my family when they couldn't believe that I would want to leave all the time. And it wasn't because I didn't love them. It wasn't because I didn't love my children. Like, it was just too much for
Yeah.
me. And like 6 months would go by after that, 8 months would go by, and little by little, I saw the time that I enjoyed spending around my kids extend more time, right? And I thought to myself, man, everything's in life is a process, including becoming a parent again.
Yeah.
But I tell I can't tell you how many times my clients have come back and told me, like, you're right, like, and yeah, that they felt the very same way. So if there's parents out there listening, like just because that happens doesn't mean they're slipping back into old behaviors. Doesn't mean that they're a defective parent. Doesn't mean that they don't love you or their children. Like, that is a process too, and they have to. One of the other things that you guys have to, that parents and loved ones have to learn is, like, there's going to be things that they have to do when they leave these programs. The general person, the average person that has a loved one that's in a recovery program, when they come out of this recovery program, the mind of the parents or the one that sent them to the program or whatever is like, oh, they're out of this thing, now they're fixed. And it just doesn't work like that. Like, there's a lot of different things that have to be done in order for this person to maintain what they've repaired. They're never going to be fixed. Look, if I walked out of this office today and I went and scored a bag of dope and I snorted a line of heroin, everything that I had gained in the last 5 years would be gone in about 48 hours. I mean, everything. Maybe not 48 hours, but probably about a week, everything would be gone. So it's worth understanding that there are things that the average addict and alcoholic has to do to maintain their sobriety, because the recourse or the other side of this is we're not fixed, right? And if I go make a mistake and put a drink or a drug in me, then everything that I've worked in, everything that I've developed, everything that all progress is going to be eliminated in absolutely no time, because they either do one of two things when they come out of a program. They either adhere to the desires of the loved one, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, or whoever, and they end up pulling themselves away from the necessary requirements to keep them sober, and they end up getting high, right? Because they're not doing the things they need to do to stay sober. Or they end up pouring themselves into recovery too much, and they end up losing the loved one because they're not spending enough time with the loved one, and they're like, well, they're paying too much attention to their recovery. So what I would argue is a good way to approach this is, while they're in these programs, is that these people go to Al-Anon and to understand the things that need to be done, and these kinds of conversations about about both parties being aware of what needs to happen and being on the same page before they transition out, and the Al-Anon is so important to get them to understand what needs to be done. Because then there's certain understandings and expectations about what's going to happen, and rather than being blindsided by somebody pouring themselves into recovery because that's what they're supposed to do, like that's what they have to do in order to salvage anything that they have left. I poured myself into so much stuff whenever I finally got out of the program, as I've already mentioned. Because I felt like I was 16 years behind the 8 ball of life, right? I poured every second I poured into the building I was remodeling that is now the Huntington Addiction Wellness Center, and I didn't have any quality of life to speak of in any other regard, because I knew that if I ever wanted to leave anything for my children, if I ever wanted to build anything for myself, for my future, for my kids' future, like, I had to do something. I was 16 years late. The things that I've done in the last 5 years, most of my friends did almost 20 years ago, right? So I had a late start at life. So I had to pour myself into a worthy cause to be able to make up for lost time. I sacrificed time with my fiance and significant other. Like, in that relationship ended. My kids got the shaft. They understand now why I did what I had to do, because they're gonna reap the rewards of it down the road.
Sure.
But they didn't at the time, right? And I had to sacrifice certain things, and I have to live with it today, right? Like, I love my son's mother to death, but unfortunately, like, she just wasn't willing to wait. Like, it wasn't willing, and I had to weigh I had to do I conform to what she wants me to do, or do I really go create a life? And these are really difficult decisions to have to make in a year and a half sober.
Right.
I had to make a decision, and I knew I wanted to help people, so I continued to do what I knew God had called me to do. Um, Whenever I was about a year and a half, when I was a year and a half sober, and I had this idea, I I got on my knees, and this is the God's honest truth. I was I needed to get I didn't have a license. I didn't have a vehicle, and I went to the executive director of the program I was working for, and I said, "Look, I need to get my own place. I need to get my own vehicle," and I was insinuating that I need to make some more money. And what he said to me was right on the money, even though I didn't like it at the time. He says, "Craig, just be patient. What's supposed to happen will happen." And I looked at him like, well, that doesn't help me very much,
Yeah.
because I thought he was going to offer me a couple more dollars on the hour or something. Well, I go home and I'm frustrated, like, because I needed to get a place, and I needed to get a house and a car, or an apartment and a car. And the only thing I know to do when I'm faced with indecision is to get on my knees and pray about it. And I got on my knees in my parents' house, because I live with my parents, and I got on my knees and I said, "God, listen, you need to tell me whether I need to go pursue my purpose and passion and helping other people, or go provide for my kids, because I can't do both in the current role that I'm doing, because I'm only making $10 or $11 an hour, and I didn't have the ability to do it." I woke up the next morning, and that concept that I currently operate with the Huntington Addiction Wellness Center hit my mind, in that building, the way the building looks, exactly. And I thought to myself, my selfish, self-centered, worldly perspective. I said to myself, well, why is nobody doing this? Why is nobody else doing this? That was my self. And then right after that, I thought, oh, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
And I realized it wasn't me at all. Like, it wasn't my brilliant mind that came up with this idea. It was placed on my head and heart. And when somebody tells me that I need to make a decision, and I feel like something else has laid this on my heart, like, that's an easy decision. Like, that's an easy thing. If I'm being told to do something by what I feel is my higher power, and like, it was an easy decision. Like, I'm pursuing my purpose and passion, because this is why I'm here on this earth.
That's so powerful. I love listening just to you. Free flow here, but it's so powerful just to listen to your story, and how you've gotten where you have, because you've been so inspirational and so forthcoming and just so honest, which I appreciate, because we are trying to break down that stigma of mental health. And in your work with addiction recovery, do you find that most people that seek help or seek recovery, they also find underlying mental health issues, and seek treatment for that as well? Or is it primarily just recovery from addiction?
A dual diagnosis is extremely, extremely common. Um, I, just speaking from experience, I see, I would argue, 65% of people that we see suffer from some form of a dual diagnosis. And but on the also with that, one could argue that the drugs and alcohol are the cause
Sure.
of both diagnoses, right? Like,
Sure.
I suffer from depression and alcoholism, but the alcohol and the drugs are what are causing, and my lack of achievements in life are what are causing the depression, right? That's kind of a an elevator pitch of what I mean. I know I personally struggle with depression. I just went through a little bout a couple of days ago. And I have to, as I've said before, like I have to get up and do something. The problem with a lot of addicts and alcoholics in early recovering addicts and alcoholics is that they let it freeze them into inaction. Right? I'm so depressed. I'm just going to sit here with the lights off and watch Netflix all day. Worst thing you can do.
Right.
Absolute worst thing you can do. Precisely why why I've put the gym in our building, that we've given them plenty of different resources, gardens, things of that nature, whatever outlet, art people come into our facility, and precisely why we do all these. Like we don't have the top notch looking building at our program, but like any resource that we have, we utilize for people that, and that's back to the individualized stuff. What works for me is not what will necessarily work for him, and we want to give everybody a resource to be able to alleviate some of those stressors, some of those dual diagnosis things that, because it's very important to have those as outlets for them.
I would say most of us are creatures of habit. I heard you use that. I often say that about myself. I'm a creature of habit. So is there some sort of habits that you use in recovery that are good for all people to use, or any sort of like structure to your day that you feel like most people would benefit, whether it's you're dealing with mental health or addiction? Is there anything that you like, what helps you on a day-to-day basis?
So one of the things that almost every program in the country do is there are organizational things that benefit everyone. And I'm going to go into a couple of other things, but one of the most important things that for me personally is I'm a pretty educated guy, right? Like I've got a college degree, and I've also got a degree from the streets too, so I understand how those things operate too. But I'm fairly cultured, right? But when I get to work, in the morning, if I don't have a list on my iPhone notepad of things that I need to do that day, I'll get in the front door and I'll forget every single one of them. I'll forget everything I have to do that day, and I can't name one of those things out of the 50 things that I need to do, which is crazy. I'm a pretty smart guy, and it's amazing how easy it is to get me off course and off track. So one of the things that I think is extremely important are alarms and my notepad list that I create the night before. On page 86 in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about constantly reviewing our day and reviewing the day ahead, right? Being aware of the things that we need to do. In my notepad the night before, I will itemize the things I need to do, and then I'll go back and I'll rearrange them so that they're the most efficient, right? So that they're most time efficient. That way it gives me the most time at the end of the day to work out, instead of doing things all out of order and I only have 30 minutes to work out. I'll arrange them so that they're in an effective and an efficient time frame, so I have 2 hours to work out instead of an hour and a half. You know, I preach this to my clients. I meet with every single one of my clients before they transition from phase 1 to phase 2, and this is something that I go over with them every time that I meet with them, is that their organization is going to make their lives significantly easier. And when I talk about consistency, as I've talked about before, my alarms on my phone look like a CVS receipt, because I mean there's about 50 of them. Why I need that many, I don't know, because most of the time I'm in a hurry and I'll just create another one. But like, I make sure that whenever I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm there. It brings me back to a story. Do we have enough time?
We have as much time as you need.
So So when I was in Richmond, Virginia, I was in Richmond, Virginia. That was the first long term program that I had ever been to. The Healing Place. That place is like boot camp, recovery boot camp.
Okay.
Man. You either got with the program or you weren't going to like your stay there very much. So I'm standing in the dining hall, and the transition coordinator, Mr. J, rest his soul, probably the most, Jeffrey Miller, he's probably the most influential person on my recovery of anyone, including my 5-year-old. Um, but he passed away a few months ago, and that was a tough day for me. But he's standing in the dining hall, and there's a guy getting ready to transition out of the program, completely finish the program, and he's obviously he's nervous. He's unsure about his ability to stay sober, permanent, long term, and he says, "What are you going to do, Mr. J? Throw me to the wolves?" And Mr. J had this really deep voice, heavy set. He said, "With all due respect, son, we are the wolves." And it didn't make any sense to me. Like he never elaborated on it. That guy had been there for 9, 10 months, and I guess maybe he had already explained it to him. But I was just passing, and I heard him say this, and I was like, "What in the hell does that mean?" So I stayed there for about another year, and then I came back to Huntington. Well, I get back to Huntington. Anytime I have somewhere to be, I like to be 15 minutes early. My favorite movie is Boiler Room with Ben Affleck. He says, "If you're early, you're on time. You're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't bother showing up."
Yeah.
And I live by that. Not well, the first two things anyway. If I'm late, I'm still going to show up. But so I got back to Huntington, and I was always 15 minutes early to meetings, to AA meetings, and I would just watch people, right? I would watch how they interacted with other people because I wanted to see what they taught me in Richmond. Are they teaching it the same things here in my hometown? I wanted to compare the recovery communities. I could almost, with 100% certainty, tell you if the people that I was watching and based on how they were reacting, treating people, and talking, I could tell you if they were from a recovery house. I could tell you if they were from a makeshift program, or I could tell you if they were from a good program. And I could almost with 100% accuracy tell you exactly what program they were from, just on how they conducted themselves. And at that moment, when I realized I could do that, I realized what Mr. J meant. I realized that we are the wolves because we operate differently. We conduct ourselves differently. We speak to people. We're more courteous to people. We're not playing grab ass at the meetings, right? We're not talking to women, we're not there to fraternize with other women. We're there to get what we need from the meeting so that we can live another day, right? We are the wolves, and I tell my I don't even know how you got me on this story or what you asked me before, but like it was important to understand like I had to do the things necessary. And Mr. J was teaching me those things, like we are the wolves and we do operate from a different, in successful, that's what it looks like. In successful, permanent, long, I'm gonna tell you, there is not it pains me to think that I'm gonna ever have to hire somebody that doesn't have the frame of reference of addiction. It pains me to think I'm gonna have to hire a normal person one day. And if you look at the normal employer, that's flipped on it. That idea is flipped on its head because they don't want to hire people because they don't want to train. And I talk about this in my book. They don't want to train and retrain people. And I get it. But if you're armed with certain facts, if you understand what work they've put in, there is nobody out there that beats a person in successful long-term recovery. No one. They're more grateful. They work harder. They know what it's like to be down here, so they're more grateful for the opportunity they're being given. They're not near as pushy. Like they operate from a certain set of principles that the normal person. I posted something about 3.5 years ago on Facebook that I see unfold. Like I'm not Miss Cleo or anything, but like I. Like, but like I posted something. I said, wouldn't it be funny wouldn't it be funny if God orchestrated this drug epidemic um, for people to go into programs, learn principles, come out of them, and then the normal person look at the person in recovery as the standard by which to live because of the principles they were taught in these recovery programs. And then wouldn't that be interesting? And look, I look around at people in successful long-term recovery that operate from these principles that I would hire every day of the week before a person that has never done a drug. That's the God's honest truth, and that's why it scares me, because I know what they're capable of, and because I know what they did in active addiction, and if they redirect those sales, like I said earlier, they're unstoppable.
Well, that's how we got led off to that. I was like, what is some things that you use that are kind of useful for everybody to help in your recovery? Because it is ongoing. I mean, it's never ending, is what I'm hearing you saying. You don't ever fully recover. You'll be living this for the rest of your life, which my dad always said that as well. But it was hard for me to conceptualize because he was sober for so long and didn't, touch anything. And so I was like, aren't you recovered? Like, you can have a glass of wine. I mean, I think honestly, I served him his first sip of alcohol after 20 something years. I was bartending and he came to visit me, and I'm like, you can have a glass of wine, right? And, I didn't know. There's so much I didn't know that I wish.
I think there are some. I think there are some people that go through a recovery program that can get out, and I know one. I know a few that do drink on the weekends and have maintained that for the last 5 or 6 years. Only thing I'm saying for me personally, it's not worth that risk to me to find out. Because the other option is that, okay, yeah, great, I can drink on the weekend or every other weekend. Yeah, I'm successful at that. Great. The other option is death for me. And
Right.
I'm not willing to find
Not
out.
willing.
No.
And that just comes, I think, with being in tune with yourself and knowing
Yeah.
yourself well enough to say, like, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't serve me, which sometimes I struggle with even saying that sentence because it sounds like we're worshiping ourselves, like, oh, that doesn't serve me. I've got to turn it away. But it doesn't serve who I'm trying to be, the person I'm trying to become or show up as every day. Those habits don't serve me. It's something I'm working on. We're all work in progress.
Jimmy Allen, my middle school basketball coach, used to say, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." Right? There is absolutely nothing broke about the disposition I've operated from in sobriety. I don't plan on adjusting anything and risking to find out any other answers. Sarah said something a little bit earlier about the disease. There's a huge contention about whether it's a disease or not, right? Like, I don't really give a shit whether it's a disease or not. That is irrelevant to me. Nobody can, no, whether you believe it's a choice, and I believe it's a disease, but I believe I made the choice initially to put it in my body, and it became that way. Now I have a physical allergy. A number of things I can dissect it as, but whether it's a choice or a disease, whether you believe that is largely irrelevant, because nobody can argue that the choices or the disease that I have wants me dead. Right? Nobody can make that argument. So it doesn't really matter. What matters is what I'm doing this point forward. We've got all these people that are arguing, hey, it's a disease. Who cares?
Right.
What does it matter?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's semantics.
Right. So I'm curious about somebody like you who has come so far. You run successful recovery program. You've written a book. Are there still days or times when it's hard? Do you still have moments like, yes, you're like, it's not worth it to me, but does the devil ever still get in?
I'm not going to tell you that I don't think about it being nice. I went on a golf trip a couple of weeks, well, I'm sorry, 2 months ago with my dad. My dad's the only other person on that trip that doesn't drink. There's about 22 business owners here in town that went, and we're in the locker room eating dinner, and everybody's got their drinks, and I'm not going to tell you that it didn't cross my mind and it didn't feel like it would be nice to have a drink and just kind of let my hair down, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't forget the pain that stuff caused me, right? And I remember my stepmom a long time ago telling me that she likes to be in control of her body and she doesn't like to feel the way she does. And it's little things like that I recall people saying, and like, you know, I'm gonna run in them. I want to go run in the morning. I don't. It's so there are things that, because we have a built-in forgetter. You know, us as addicts and
Mm-hmm.
alcoholics, we have a built-in forgetter in our mind. We forget about the pain it causes, and the only thing that we remember, especially in early recovery and active addiction, the only thing that we remember is the pleasure that we receive from the substance, right? We don't consider the bad times and the consequences. I used to joke. I used to joke that I had the world's first smart car. I had the world's first smart car. The Tesla didn't have shit on my Kia Optima, uh, because it didn't matter how bad I knew the consequences were going to be. It didn't matter how quickly my girlfriend was going to leave me. It didn't matter of anything. My car, multiple times a day, found its way to the dope man's house. I didn't have the strength in my hand or my arms to turn it around in Speedway parking lot and go back home. I, I couldn't do it. So that's why I joke. I had it every day, multiple times a day. It's found even against my will. So people that "Oh, you just gotta have some willpower," would say, "Gotta have some willpower." Okay,
Yeah.
and you know, it's easy for you to say, but give me your phone, and every time you think about your phone,
Right.
that's exactly what it's like. Only, only I do home invasions for OxyContin, right? Like you're not going to go do a home invasion for a cheeseburger or for your cell phone. Like I do stuff that risks my freedom
Right.
for that stuff. It's that powerful.
It is.
That's, yeah, that's such a good point. I want to make sure I cover all of the questions that I had on here because some of our listeners actually wrote in some good questions. I think you've covered most of them, but a lot of it was like how, just like, what's our role as a friend or as a loved one? A lot of those types of questions and repairing relationships. I know that's part of like a 12-step program, typically, where you go back and make amends, I believe, or something to that effect. But
That's funny. I have a good one on that. When we're talking about making amends, and I talk about this in my book too. Um, in the 12-step fellowship, the ninth step um, is where we make amends, right? And uh, I I've done three or four of them, and in all of those, you write them on a piece of paper who you've harmed, you know, your sex harms, you know, a number of different things, and the two people that I harmed the most in my life were my mother and my father. And I remember one time I got my dad for about $25,000. He signed a $25,000 co-signed a loan for me. I had got him to believe that I had a bunch of things I had to pay off, and he wasn't dumb enough to release all 25,000 to me at one time. But don't think I didn't get 12 or 13 of it. Because I'm a car salesman, but you know I'm a drug addict and a car salesman, so you know that's just a double whammy.
right.
But So when I'm filling out these papers, the two people I left off were my mother and my father of those amends lists, and I didn't think about this until a couple of years ago. And the reason I left them off was because, like, subliminally, my father and my relationship has been always been good, right? My mother and I, we've always been cordial, and especially in the last 5 years, it's been really good. That is irrelevant in terms of an amends needing to be made for the harms I did in the past, right? Just because my relationship was good with my father doesn't negate or doesn't eliminate the wrongs that I did to them in the past. And it never occurred to me. It never occurred to me. So I left them off. And then I thought to myself, like, if my parents knew anything about the amends making process, or found my sheets of paper and saw the omissions of their name on those pieces of paper, could you imagine how pissed they would be?
Yeah.
Like, and it opened my eyes, and I talk to my clients about this when we're talking about the amends process and the 4-step, and making the list of people that we're going to make amends to, and I'm like, look, just because your relationship is good doesn't mean they're not worthy or deserving of an I'm sorry, right? That's the mistake I made. I can just imagine my mom searching through one of my folders and be like, oh, well, my name's not on that one. It's not on that one. It's not on that one. Well, that son of a bitch. You know what I mean? Like, how slighted she would feel.
Right.
Or my father, like,
Yeah.
not one time making that list. So that was a learning experience for me. But it is important, like, and most of the people that we attempt to make an amends to are going to be satisfied with the progress that we made, and that's what we call as a living amends. Like, they don't want you to do anything. 90% of these people are going to say, you know what, I'm really proud of what you've done. I'm proud that you turned your life around, and it's heading in the right direction. That's good enough for me, right? 90% of people are going to say that. It's going to be few and far between. They're going to say, yeah, I want the $100 back that I gave you, or you stole from me, or whatever. And that's not going to happen. And I think a lot of us don't pursue that amends process because we're fearful of all the things that we're going to have to do to pay back the wrongs that we did. But from my experience, it's getting the courage to approach these people is the hardest part. Most of them have already forgiven us. And something I talked about earlier today in class with my clients is, like, whenever I started to spend myself in a worthy cause, even the people that I harmed the most when I was out there were the first ones to come lend a helping hand whenever and I didn't even have to ask for it. They were like, everybody loves a good comeback story. All good movies, good movies are based on Rudy. Look at Rudy, like all this stuff. Not that Rudy ever snorted heroin, but you know what I mean.
Not that we know.
Things of that nature, but it's a feel good thing. Like, everybody likes it. Everybody loves when the Chicago or an NBA team goes up 3-0 and somebody else comes back and wins 4 games to 3. Right?
Exactly.
Right. When the Bills win the Super Bowl. Right.
That's right.
Does that ever happen?
Well, a long time ago, I think there's rumor that it did. Yes. But I think just to kind of capitalize on a few things that Craig has said, and again, for some of the listeners that might find themselves in this position, gosh, I don't know. Like I said, I worked for 5 years in a very active and one of the most rewarding recovery based programs that I met the best people in my life, and they were the patients that I was a part of. But I've never met a single person who ever volunteered to become a drug addict.
Right.
Can I just say that? Like, I just think that that's important. Like, I've never met somebody that said, you know, on their, I don't know, middle school or elementary school paper, what do you want to be whenever you grow up? And they wrote in drug addict.
Yeah.
So just to kind of, right. That's not happened. I mean, maybe. But I think that's important. And that whenever someone finds themselves in this position, it is not one, again, that I think initially is an act of choice. There's certain sets of behaviors and everything else that then follow through that. But from a loved one's perspective, I don't think that your love for that person ever dies. I think it transforms with the course of the addiction as you see that person making that transition and progress to it. I think it's important for, if you're on the other side of this, that you get help too. So addiction is not a, and I talk about things from a medical standpoint because I work in medicine. So it's not a singular disease. It is a communicable one. And so it's just like whenever we talk about trauma, there are primary and tertiary, or there's, you know, a first level and a second level. If you are in the life of an addict, you are also suffering from the disease of addiction in a different kind of way or course. And so by saying that, I am a huge fan of people going to Al-Anon. I think that I genuinely believe that people benefit the most from people who are like them, just kind of like what you said. Because it's that shared story and perspective that really does add on top of education or whatever else can kind of bring to it. But I think it's important for the family members to get help, to understand the recovery process and what may or may not be asked of them. And, you know, the hard decisions that do have to come with that. And having that support system is important for them on that side as well. Not forgetting the role that kids play. And I really appreciate the fact that you brought up the hard standpoint of coming back into that home environment, because it's just sensory overload.
Yeah.
And if you take a person that has been isolated, I don't care, in a very similar thread as you mentioned, prison, somebody who's been in war, you take them on a baseball field and they can't stay there because the crack of a metal bat sounds just like a gunshot, you know? And so it's different things that we have to be very aware that from that kind of standpoint, we just have to be patient with the process in order for the process to become more permanent or long-term. And so that's hard, I think, especially if you're a mom who's just had this great desire to, you know, see your son and dad like throw a ball with one another, or to wrestle in the front yard, or to play a game. But we have to just kind of pump the brakes ourselves and being in that loved one's position in order for this to be a more frequent occurrence that happens. And I think the other thing is that, you know, emotional regulation is kind of what we're talking about almost to begin with, in a weird way. And so, you know, as you kind of mentioned, whenever you think about somebody who gets that first high, it's that elation, it's that great, it's those positive feelings that they get the rush with. And then the sadness, the desire, all of these emotions then become attached to a substance. And so feeling those emotions without that substance is sometimes hard. And I think that's a point of patience for us too. You know what I mean? Just to kind of remember that, or to remember that as we're all trying to learn different coping skills for coping with, you know, negative thought processes or feeling depressed or anything else, that all of those things have another behavioral associate with it. And whenever those ties are strong, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of practice, consistency in order to stretch that further.
Is there any, oh, I know what I wanted to ask. Do you only serve people in Huntington as far as HAWC, the wellness center, or do you all see people outside of Huntington?
West Virginia currently.
Okay.
So and that pains me, right? Because, and I'm glad you asked that. In the city of Huntington, we have had an influx of, not necessarily, we have an influx, our homeless population is increasing, right? And we're really unsure as to if it's just transients or if it's recovery program related. I know, and I've seen data, I've generated my own data that it is not recovery related. But there is a demographic or a portion of the elected officials in the city that do truly believe it's because of the recovery programs. I can prove otherwise, but some people don't like empirical data. So what I have committed, you know, I understand that there's two sides to everything, right? There's Democrat or Republican, there's two sides to everything. And although I adhere and believe in one side, I also respect the other side, right? And when somebody says that we have an issue in Huntington and a portion of the issue is recovery programs, taking people from out of state, bringing people from St. Louis and things of that nature, I made a commitment that we would treat West Virginians and specifically people from the Huntington area only, that we wouldn't bring in. And it pains me not to bring somebody from outside of a 50-mile radius, right, or the state of West Virginia. It pains me to tell somebody no, but I have to operate inside an ecosystem of Huntington, and and I have to pay the piper, so to speak. I have to answer to certain people. And in order for me to be able to be as effective to the people that I serve, I have to recognize all opinions. And that's
Sure.
why I do that.
That makes sense. Do you know of other programs similar to HAWC that exist in other states?
Yes. If that, and I tell you what, the easiest thing to do is to send them to our website.
Okay.
If they go to our website and inquire about a bed with our organization, we will refer them to the organization, because I can name 5 or 10 of them.
Yeah.
But if they send it to my intake coordinator, is trained to get them to places in their region.
In their region. Okay. That's great. We could put that on our website too, just a link straight to your website, so that anybody listening that might want to reach out, they could find themselves someplace locally to them, something doing similar to the work you guys are doing down in Huntington.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we've covered everything. Or, I mean, I could talk to you all day, Craig. I honestly could. I think, I think this is such an important topic, just because we've all dealt with it on some level, and
It's complex.
it's complex. It is, and it's so intertwined. And just listening to you talk, I'm like, wow, I can relate to that in my job and the way things get. Same thing. You can do so much in a school environment, but kids go home to that home environment at the end of the day, and I have no control over that. And so it's very similar to what you're saying. You get out of a recovery program, you're right back in a lot of times the exact same environment you came from, where you were a functioning addict, or maybe maybe not functioning, but and it's hard to change that. I think that for most people, that's hard to change their environment once they come back.
Yeah, changing the playmates and the playgrounds, right?
Right.
That's right. I for the longest time, before we break, I just never really thought that I was good enough, that I was capable of doing certain things, and one of the foundational elements, people ask all the time, well, how can we have David recover at home? Well, it's difficult to do that, because at home you don't have that network of people that you're generating that literally champion you on a daily basis, right? You're not developing a support network at home other than with your dog, and your dog doesn't really, which that reminds me of another story about my grandmother. But anyway, I was so excited whenever I came home from Richmond, Virginia, and I'm like, Grandma, I've got 9 months with clean and sober. I haven't put a cent. She looked at me with all seriousness. She's like, so does the dog. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? That she's right. And this is an important point, right? Because not everybody's going to be enthused about what we've done, because I shouldn't require a pat on the back for the things that I should have been doing anyways, right? Yes, it is a great personal accomplishment. It is great, but if my son rises and sets on everybody's belief or everybody's opinion of me, I'm going to be supremely disappointed in life, right? Because there's always, Jesus had critics, right?
Yeah, right.
So I had to get to a place where not some people are still not going to like me, and that's okay. That's okay, and I had to get to that point.
Yeah.
But in terms of programs and things of that nature, I had to have that support network that I generated in a program, because those are the people that lift me up on a daily basis and push me when I don't want to go any further, and they continue to shove me. Yes, Craig, you can do this. Keep going. So that's why I feel like programs are so important, and I don't really have a frame of reference on how to do it outside of one, because it's how I've done it, and I see it being most effective, because like-minded people there's power in numbers.
Well, God has big plans for you, that's for sure. And I can't wait to see the rest of it. Can't wait to see what unfolds after the book comes out.
I keep thinking this is going to be it, right? I keep thinking, and to your point, this is there's certainly not going to be anything else. And then I in the last year I I'm an undefeated boxer, and then I write a book, and I'm like, well, I said this got to be it last year, so then this happened this year, so maybe there is something else.
Something's going to
Sure.
be growing, that's for sure. There might be a hawk in every city before it's over.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool. Oh,
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. You can reach us on, or you can find us on social media at the LYLAS Podcast, on our website, lylaspodcast.com, and on Facebook, of course, at the LYLAS Podcast. So thanks again, Craig. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
We know it's precious. Thank you for spending it with us. And we'll see you next week.
yes.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch, man.
Likewise.